The bell above the door chimed as Martha Bellamy stepped into Bellamy & Company Jewelers, the scent of polished wood and lavender still familiar after all these years. She wore her Sunday coat, neatly buttoned, and held a small paper bag filled with oatmeal cookies, her son Jordan's favorite since he was a boy. She wasn't expected. That was the fun of it. A surprise visit, a quiet hello. But the moment she stepped past the welcome mat, something felt wrong. The woman behind the counter, someone Martha didn't recognize, lifted her eyes, scanned Martha from head to toe, and didn't smile. Instead, her lips pressed into a thin, suspicious line. Martha's fingers tightened around the paper bag. She didn't know it yet, but within 20 minutes she'd be accused of theft, handcuffed in front of strangers, and fighting not just for her dignity, but for the truth to be seen. Martha moved slowly past the entrance, letting the warmth of the shop settle into her bones like a familiar blanket. Bellamy & Company had changed a lot over the years, sleeker shelves, brighter lights, more polished elegance, but to her, it would always be more than just a store. It was Jordan's promise fulfilled. After Charles passed, the house had felt too quiet, the air too still. But this shop? This shop had buzzed with life, with sketches on napkins, with late nights and takeout containers, with hope. Martha had watched her son pour himself into every corner, choosing tiles by hand, sanding counters himself, staying up till dawn tweaking window displays. And she? She had been there with muffins and mop buckets, ready to help scrub the dream into something real. Now, even as her steps had slowed, even as her eyes needed glasses and her knees reminded her of the years, this place still felt like theirs. Her fingers drifted along the glass cases, pausing over a delicate set of pearl studs. Modest, timeless, the kind Charles would have picked without hesitation. She smiled. Some people built monuments out of stone. Her son had built one out of gold, glass, and grit. And every time she stepped inside, she didn't just feel proud, she felt home. Martha moved past the rows of necklaces and gemstones until something soft and familiar caught her eye. A pair of vintage diamond earrings nestled against a cream velvet cushion. Her breath hitched. They were nearly identical to the ones Charles had given her on their 25th wedding anniversary. Not flashy, not large, just elegant. Two stones side by side, like promises quietly kept. She leaned in. The glass reflected her face back at her, silver curls tucked under a beret, lines of time resting gently around her eyes. And yet, for a moment, she saw herself as she was that night, wearing a midnight blue dress, Charles fumbling with the clasp, his hands shaking just a little as he whispered, "Still the most beautiful girl I've ever seen." She hadn't thought of those earrings in years. They'd been sold long ago when bills piled too high and choices had to be made. She never told Jordan, never wanted pity, just survival. Now here they were again, or something so close it hurt. She leaned forward for a better look, pressing one hand gently on the case. Just as her reading glasses slipped down the bridge of her nose, her elbow nudged the display stand. Tap. One earring teetered, wobbled once, then fell. A tiny click as it struck the glass shelf, then a second clink as it hit the floor. Martha froze. Her eyes widened, hand halfway reaching down. The jazz music kept playing overhead, oblivious. But in Martha's chest, the room had already gone still. Just as Martha began to crouch, a voice sliced through the stillness like a glass shard. "Excuse me, ma'am, what exactly are you doing?" Martha turned slowly. A woman stood a few feet away, tall, sharp-featured, hair pulled back into a sleek bun so tight it looked like it might snap. Her blazer was crisp, her name tag read Carmen Dale, and her gaze? Unforgiving. Martha offered a faint apologetic smile. "I'm so sorry, I accidentally knocked it off. I was just admiring." "Admiring?" Carmen repeated flatly, her eyes drifting not toward the earring on the floor, but toward Martha's coat pocket. "That's a generous word." Martha blinked. I didn't mean any harm." "Of course not," Carmen said, voice icy and smooth. "People rarely do, at least not when they're caught." That word again. Caught. It clung to the air like cigarette smoke. Martha straightened, gently holding the earring between her fingers. "It slipped, that's all. I come here often. My son." But Carmen stepped closer, folding her arms. "Your son?" "Yes, Jordan. He—" "Let's not play games," Carmen cut in. "I don't care who you say you know. What I care about is protocol. And from where I'm standing, it looks like you were about to pocket a diamond earring." Martha's lips parted. That's not true. Carmen's smile tightened. Intent is tricky, and age doesn't equal innocence. The words landed like slaps, each one polite on the surface, but laced with something venomous beneath. I think we're done here, Carmen said. Please stay where you are. I'll be contacting security and the authorities. Martha stood still, hands slightly raised as if trying to calm a wild animal. I dropped it, she whispered again, voice shaking now. That's all. But Carmen had already turned away, heels clicking like gunshots across the tile. And in that moment, Martha realized she wasn't being spoken to, she was being handled. I really think there's been a misunderstanding, Martha said softly, still holding the earring like it might prove her innocence. Carmen didn't even look at her. She was already gesturing to another employee behind the counter, a young man named Lucas, barely older than 20, earbuds dangling around his neck. Lucas, she called, can you step over here, please? He walked over, uncertain. I need a witness, Carmen said plainly. We've got a potential incident. Incident? Martha repeated, voice rising slightly in disbelief. It was an accident. Carmen turned to her, cutting her off with a raised hand. Please, let me finish. You've had plenty of chances to explain. But you haven't listened to a single word I've said, Martha replied, trying to stay calm. I didn't try to steal anything. I just leaned in too far. My elbow. You leaned, you dropped, you reached behind the glass, Carmen listed with calculated precision. 1, 2, 3. That's enough for suspicion. Lucas looked from Carmen to Martha, clearly uncomfortable. She says her son owns the place, he mumbled. Carmen scoffed. And I say I'm next in line for the throne. Doesn't make it true. Martha's hands trembled slightly, still outstretched. If you just call Jordan, Jordan isn't here, Carmen said quickly. And even if he were, this would still be inappropriate. You don't get special treatment because you claim to know someone. Lucas shifted awkwardly. She seems sincere. She seems like our first test of the day, Carmen snapped, then gave a smirk. Congratulations, ma'am. You're our warm-up act. The insult didn't even try to hide anymore. Martha lowered her hands. Her cheeks burned, not just with humiliation, but with something colder. The knowledge that no matter how carefully she chose her words, they were already discounted. She wasn't being seen. She was being profiled, dismissed, dehumanized, and no amount of reason was going to change that. Martha stood motionless as Carmen reached beneath the counter and retrieved a slim black phone. No, please, Martha said quickly, voice trembling. There's no need to do that. I haven't done anything wrong. Carmen didn't respond. She was already dialing. Martha stepped forward a little. I dropped it, that's all. I even handed it back to you. You saw that? Carmen turned slightly, her voice calm, almost rehearsed. Yes, hello. This is Bellamy & Co. I need to report a suspected theft in progress. Martha's heart dropped. Suspected theft? She's still here, Carmen continued, eyeing Martha without emotion. African-American female, approximately 75 to 80. Short gray hair, heavy coat, possibly tried to pocket a diamond earring. Martha flinched, not at the words, but at the detached, clinical way they were said. Like a police report written before anything had even happened. Why are you doing this? She asked, voice cracking. Carmen ended the call and finally looked at her. Because it's policy. Policy, Martha echoed. Since when is humiliating a woman your policy? Carmen exhaled slowly, as if explaining to a stubborn child. When potential shoplifting occurs, we're required to notify authorities. I'm not a thief. Then you have nothing to worry about. Those words didn't comfort. They stabbed. Martha's knees felt weak. She glanced toward the window, the street just outside, so close, yet unreachable. All she'd wanted was to surprise her son. Now she was being treated like a criminal. And the worst part? No one in that store, not one person, had said a thing. The door swung open hard enough to rattle the hinges. 2 officers stepped in. One tall and square-jawed, the other younger, fingers already resting near his belt. Their boots echoed like thunder on the showroom floor. Carmen met them halfway. That's her, she said, pointing toward Martha like identifying a bag left unattended. She attempted to conceal merchandise. Martha's lips parted. No, I didn't. I explained, but neither officer turned to her. They didn't ask her name. They didn't ask what happened. They didn't even ask to see the cameras. Ma'am, we need you to come with us, the younger one said flatly. I didn't take anything, she replied. Please, I dropped it. It was a mistake. Step forward. Her hands trembled. Please just call my son. His name is Jordan Bellamy. He owns—" Turn around. It didn't feel real, until she felt the cold steel clamp around her wrists. Click, click. The sound was louder than it should have been. Louder than the jazz music, louder than her heartbeat, louder than the quiet gasps of customers who had begun to gather in the corners. Outside, a few people slowed on the sidewalk, drawn by the uniformed presence, the elderly woman now in handcuffs, and the woman behind the counter watching like a judge. Martha's breath came in short, shallow bursts. The floor seemed to tilt. She wasn't a suspect. She wasn't even a person. She was a headline waiting to happen, and no one, not one soul, was standing up to stop it. The store's front door slammed open, bell jangling violently. Jordan Bellamy froze in the doorway, briefcase still in hand, wind from the street catching the edge of his coat. Then he saw her, his mother, in handcuffs, head slightly bowed, two officers flanking her, and for a second, he couldn't breathe. The room tilted. He dropped the briefcase with a thud that startled even the officers. Then he moved. Fast. "What the hell is going on here?" His voice cracked like thunder. Everyone turned. Carmen stiffened behind the counter. "Mr. Bellamy, I didn't realize you were—" He ignored her. He went straight to his mother. "Mama." She looked up, eyes glassy. "Jordan," she whispered, "I didn't do anything." "I know." His voice broke, then hardened. He turned to the officers. "Take them off, now." The taller cop cleared his throat. "Sir, we were called in to respond to a shoplifting—" "She is my mother," Jordan said, each syllable sharper than the last. "And this is my store. You didn't ask. You didn't check. You just cuffed an elderly woman because someone pointed a finger? We had probable cause." "No," he cut in. "You had assumptions, and clearly you acted on them." He turned to Carmen, who was suddenly pale. "Did you even try to speak to her? Ask her name? Or did you just see someone who didn't look the part?" "She dropped an earring," Carmen muttered weakly. "It looks suspicious." Jordan stared at her like he didn't recognize her. "You called the police on the woman who helped build this store." The room was dead silent. Even the jazz had stopped. Jordan took a breath, controlled but seething. "Uncuff her, apologize, or I swear this won't end here." Carmen took a shaky breath, trying to hold her ground. "Mr. Bellamy, please, you weren't here." She was leaning over the case. She dropped something. It looked like, well, I thought she was trying to— "To what?" Jordan snapped. "Steal from her own son's store?" Carmen's face flushed. "I didn't know she was your mother." Jordan's voice dropped, low and deadly. "That's not the point, and you damn well know it." He took a step closer, every word like stone through glass. "You didn't ask. You didn't listen. You didn't show her an ounce of basic decency. You looked at an old black woman in a nice store and jumped straight to criminal. That tells me everything I need to know." Carmen opened her mouth, but nothing came. Jordan didn't wait. "You're done here, effective immediately. Please, just let me explain." "No, you don't work here anymore. You don't represent me. You don't belong in a place my mother helped build." She faltered, then turned and walked briskly toward the back, shoulders caved in. Jordan faced the officers. "And you two?" The younger one looked down. "You owe her more than just an apology," Jordan continued. "But for now, I want to hear it. Clearly." Both men stood still. Jordan stepped between them and Martha, his hand gently on her shoulder. "She's been humiliated, hurt, and treated like less than human." He looked back up. "You owe her your silence. Now say it." The older officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. We shouldn't have acted so quickly. We were wrong." The younger one nodded. "We apologize." Martha's lips quivered, but she said nothing. She didn't have to, because for the first time that day, someone else finally did. As the handcuffs fell away, Martha exhaled shakily. Jordan caught her wrists gently, rubbing the red marks with his thumbs. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. She shook her head, but didn't answer, because the real pain wasn't in her bones. It was in her breath, in the way everyone had watched and no one had spoken. The store was silent now, not the quiet of a calm morning, but the hush that follows a thunderclap. Customers frozen mid-step, employees looking down. The jazz still paused as if it too was ashamed. Jordan helped his mother to the nearest chair, crouching beside her like he had when he was a child, after scraping his knee. Then he stood and faced the officers. "You humiliated an innocent woman," he said, "in front of strangers, without even asking who she was." The older cop shifted uncomfortably. "We responded based on—" "Don't!" Jordan cut him off. You didn't respond, you reacted, and you reacted wrong." He turned to his mother, then back again. "I want you to look her in the eyes and say it. Say you're sorry." Both officers hesitated. The younger one cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we apologize deeply." Martha looked up, eyes glassy. She didn't nod. She didn't speak. But in her stillness was something louder than forgiveness. It was dignity, unbroken. The story didn't end when the door closed behind the officers. If anything, that's when it truly began. By the next morning, someone had posted a video, blurry but unmistakable. Martha in cuffs, Jordan demanding her release, Carmen shrinking beneath the weight of her own decisions. Within hours, the clip was everywhere. Local news picked it up. Then national headlines followed. Talk shows debated it. Comment sections exploded. Some expressed outrage, others disbelief. Many, far too many, shared their own stories, eerily similar. And through it all, Martha stayed silent. Not because she had nothing to say, but because she knew she didn't need to. Jordan, however, made sure her voice was heard. He shut down Bellamy & Co. for 5 days, held meetings, brought in educators, hired trainers on unconscious bias, elder respect, cultural awareness. He met with community leaders, invited pastors, historians, and activists into the space where his mother had once been shamed, and he made a promise. "This store," he said at a press conference outside the shop, "was built to honor legacy, not erase it. We failed once, we won't again." Martha stood beside him. She didn't smile for the cameras, she didn't pose. She simply stood, and people noticed. When the store reopened, customers came not just to buy, but to thank her. Children hugged her. Strangers asked to shake her hand. Former students from decades ago showed up with flowers. She never raised her voice, never demanded justice. She simply lived it, and in doing so, reminded everyone what dignity looked like when tested. Because change doesn't always come from courtrooms or headlines. Sometimes it walks through a front door holding a bag of cookies, and leaves, hand in hand with the son it raised right. A week later, the store was quieter than usual. Not empty, just softer, like it was still learning how to breathe again. Martha stood near the window, holding a cup of tea Jordan had made her himself, just the way she liked it, with a touch of honey and a slice of lemon. She wasn't there to shop, or to visit, just to be. Jordan joined her, gaze out on the street. "The world's still loud out there," he said. She smiled faintly. "Always has been. You sure you're okay?" She looked up at him, her son, the man she'd once held with one arm while grading papers with the other. The man who'd now held her steady when the world tried to knock her down. "I'm okay," she said, "but I'm not the same." He nodded. "That's not a bad thing." She glanced around the store. Same lights, same walls, same glass cases. But everything had changed. Not the things you could touch, the things you could feel. As they walked to the door, the bell chimed once more. This time, it didn't sound routine. It sounded like renewal. Like something hard had cracked, so something better could grow. And as Martha stepped back into the sunlight, she didn't carry anger. She carried proof. That sometimes it only takes one moment, one voice, and one act of love to turn injustice into change.